Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're breaking down Ukraine's latest strike and why it has once again exposed the weakness of the Crimea Bridge. This was not just another explosion or headline moment. It was a carefully calculated action that revealed deep structural, strategic, and psychological vulnerabilities in one of Russia's most important symbols of control. The Crimea Bridge has always carried more weight than its physical structure. It connects mainland Russia to Crimea and serves as a vital artery for military logistics, civilian movement, and political messaging. When Ukraine targets this bridge, it is never accidental. It is meant to send a message far beyond the blast zone. Ukraine's latest strike showed that despite layers of protection, surveillance, and defenses, the bridge remains vulnerable. That fact alone reshapes assumptions on both sides of the conflict. A structure presented as secure and untouchable has once again been proven otherwise. The timing of the strike matters. Ukraine did not act randomly. It waited for conditions where impact would be maximized. That includes traffic flow, repair cycles, and defensive patterns that have become predictable over time. Every major military structure develops routines. Ukraine's intelligence efforts focus on identifying those routines and exploiting them. The bridge is no exception. What looks like a sudden attack is often the result of weeks or months of observation. From a military perspective, the bridge is a logistical choke point. Supplies, fuel, ammunition, and reinforcements all pass through it. Even temporary disruption forces Russia to reroute resources, slow operations, and increase exposure elsewhere. The latest strike demonstrated that Russia still struggles to fully protect fixed infrastructure. Mobile units can reposition. Bases can disperse assets. A bridge cannot move. That makes it an ideal pressure point. Russia has invested heavily in air defenses around the bridge. Additional radar systems, patrol boats, barriers, and checkpoints were deployed after previous attacks. Yet Ukraine still found a way through. This exposes gaps not just in hardware, but in coordination. Defenses are only as effective as the systems connecting them. When sensors fail to share data or responses lag by seconds, attackers gain opportunity. Ukraine's strike highlighted these coordination weaknesses. The physical damage itself is only part of the story. Even limited damage forces inspections, closures, and repairs. Each closure compounds delays and uncertainty. That uncertainty spreads quickly through military planning. For Russian forces in Crimea, reliability matters. They need to know when supplies will arrive. When a bridge becomes unpredictable, confidence drops. Logistics becomes a constant concern rather than a background function. Morale is affected in subtle ways. Soldiers may not openly panic, but repeated disruptions create stress. A force that worries about supply lines is a force that cannot focus entirely on combat readiness. The strike also had a strong psychological impact beyond the battlefield. The bridge is a symbol. It represents Russia's claim over Crimea. When that symbol is repeatedly challenged, the narrative of control weakens. Inside Russia, authorities work to minimize the perceived impact. Official statements emphasize quick repairs and limited damage, but the repetition of incidents tells its own story. The bridge keeps getting hit because it keeps being vulnerable. Ukraine understands the power of repetition. One strike may be dismissed. Multiple strikes create a pattern. Patterns undermine confidence far more effectively than single events. The weakness exposed by the latest strike is not just physical security. It is strategic inflexibility. Russia must defend the bridge because it cannot afford to lose it. Ukraine knows this and exploits that necessity. Every additional defense placed around the bridge is a resource not used elsewhere. Air defense units guarding the bridge are not guarding airfields or frontline positions. Ukraine benefits from this redistribution. This is how pressure campaigns work. They force the opponent into difficult trade-offs. Protect the bridge and weaken other areas, or spread defenses thin and risk another strike. Ukraine's approach remains measured. There is no rush to completely destroy the bridge in one dramatic moment. Instead, the focus is on sustained vulnerability. A bridge that is always under threat is almost as problematic as one that is destroyed. Repairs become temporary. Confidence never fully returns. The latest strike also reinforces Ukraine's growing capability to reach deep targets. Early in the war, such strikes were rare and risky. Now they are increasingly precise and calculated. This shift reflects improvements in intelligence, targeting, and coordination. Ukraine has learned how to operate within contested airspace and complex defensive environments. The strike shows that defenses alone cannot guarantee safety. Static targets require layered protection, rapid response, and constant adaptation. Any lapse creates opportunity. Russia faces a dilemma. Upgrading defenses takes time and resources. Every upgrade invites new countermeasures. This cycle favors the attacker when the attacker adapts faster. Ukraine's strategy appears focused on exactly that dynamic. Move faster, adapt quicker, force the defender to constantly react. The bridge's weakness also lies in geography. It spans a narrow area over water, limiting alternate routes. Any damage has immediate impact. There are no easy detours. Alternative supply routes exist, but they are longer, slower, and more exposed. Relying on them increases costs and risk. Ukraine understands this logistical math. Civilian disruption adds another layer. Traffic delays, inspections, and closures affect daily life. When civilians feel the impact of military decisions, pressure on leadership increases. Ukraine is careful to frame its actions as military necessity. This matters internationally. Maintaining support requires demonstrating strategic intent rather than indiscriminate damage. The latest strike fits that narrative. It targeted infrastructure critical to military logistics, not civilian centers. International observers are paying attention. Each successful strike on the bridge reinforces the perception that Russian control over Crimea is contested, not settled. This perception influences diplomacy, aid decisions, and long-term planning. The bridge becomes more than a structure. It becomes a signal. For Ukraine, exposing weakness is as valuable as exploiting it. The message is clear. Even heavily defended symbols are not immune. For Russia, the message is uncomfortable. Strength is harder to project when vulnerabilities are repeatedly revealed. The strike also highlights the limits of deterrence. Warnings and red lines have not prevented attacks. This reduces their credibility over time. Deterrence relies on belief. When belief fades, behavior changes. Ukraine's continued actions test those limits. From a broader perspective, the strike reflects how modern warfare targets systems rather than just forces. Infrastructure, logistics, and psychology are all part of the battlefield. The Crimea Bridge sits at the intersection of all three. That is why it remains a focal point. The weakness exposed is not something that can be fixed overnight. Even if repairs are completed quickly, the underlying vulnerability remains. Ukraine can choose when to strike. Russia must defend at all times. That imbalance favors the attacker. As long as Ukraine retains the capability and intent, the bridge will remain a strategic liability. This does not mean immediate collapse. It means sustained pressure. Pressure that accumulates slowly but persistently. Each strike adds another layer of doubt, another planning challenge, another resource drain. Over time, these effects compound. Military history shows that wars are often decided by accumulation rather than single decisive blows. The latest strike fits that pattern. It is one more push on a structure already under strain. For Russia, maintaining control over Crimea requires confidence, logistics, and security. The bridge is central to all three. For Ukraine, undermining that control does not require occupying the bridge. It requires proving it cannot be fully protected. The weakness exposed is therefore strategic, not just tactical. It reveals a limitation in Russia's ability to guarantee stability in Crimea. As the conflict continues, infrastructure like the bridge will remain critical targets. They shape the battlefield without direct confrontation. Ukraine's patience suggests a long-term view. The goal is not spectacle. It is erosion, erosion of confidence, erosion of logistics, erosion of narrative. The Crimea Bridge stands as a visible marker of that process. Each strike reinforces the same conclusion. Control is contested. Security is incomplete. Assumptions must be reconsidered. The latest strike did not end the war. It did not decide Crimea's future overnight, but it exposed a weakness that cannot be ignored. And in warfare, once a weakness is known, it rarely stops being exploited. That is why this moment matters. Not because of what was damaged, but because of what was revealed. The bridge still stands, but the illusion of invulnerability does not. And as long as that illusion remains broken, the pressure will continue. This is how strategic campaigns unfold, quietly, repeatedly, relentlessly. Ukraine's latest strike is another step in that direction, and it ensures that the Crimea Bridge will remain a symbol not just of connection, but of vulnerability. A reminder that even the strongest structures can become weak points when placed under sustained pressure. And as this pressure builds, the implications will continue to ripple far beyond the bridge itself. So stay with us as we keep tracking these developments, because moments like this help us understand not just what happened, but where the conflict may be heading next.